Countries that have never had a temperature above 35 degrees Celsius, or in other words, 95 degrees Fahrenheit, there's only two, and it is Ireland and Iceland, which oddly feels a little weird. You would think at the very least Leprechaun Land would get that hot. I also wouldn't expect Finland to be getting that hot, especially if Ireland is not. Finland's like Santa Claus land. It's always like cold and snowy up there, at least from pictures I see. Same actually goes for all these Nordic countries. Does it really get that hot here? Sweden kind of dips down pretty low, so maybe that's like an exception there, but even Norway, maybe they have like an island that one time got like 96 degrees, so that's how they don't count. The only thing that makes sense here is that Iceland doesn't get that hot. It better not. You gotta stay true to that name. US time zones, if they weren't adjusted for political boundaries, a standard time zone is 15 degrees of longitude wide, indicated with the gray vertical lines. And they reach all the way up here to the North Pole. Now this is what we're actually working with. We have Pacific, Mountain Time, Central, and then Eastern. And I will never understand why a part of Oregon is only 1 hour behind a part of Florida. As you can see, the system we use right now doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If we were to be perfectly equal with this, though, there would actually be 5 time zones within the United States, because this very easternmost point in Maine would technically be in the Atlantic Standard Time. So it'd be like 10 p.m. here, but only 5 p.m. in LA. But wait, that actually only counts for the lower 48. I'm sorry I missed out on you guys, Alaska and Hawaii. Technically, Alaska and Hawaii would be running off pretty similar times, except if you live out in one of these like barren islands. In a weird way, this simplified time zone map kind of still makes things really complicated. Here's a diagram showing the underground tunnels the Vietcong used during the Vietnam War. Hide your grandpa, because he might have some flashbacks. So the Vietcong would use someone as bait, that's a fun job, to lure Americans into a trap. A trap like this, which is just a classic pit with spikes. Sometimes a spider hole where a sniper would wait. And there was also tripwires with grenades. It also made the tunnels very curvy so the Americans couldn't shoot straight in. Some caves were equipped with medicines and special ventilation. The US would also use dogs apparently to go sniff out for entrances of tunnels, but they would unfortunately often perish in traps. Can we stop doing this to dogs, please? Village entrances to tunnels were often located in pig corrals hidden under a layer of manure. There'd be like a thin wall where people would be looking and then they would just like stab them. This is getting like to Indiana Jones level of craziness. There were scorpion traps. Basically, if you tripped over a string, it would open a door, filling the tunnel with scorpions. At the same time, they would strap venomous snakes to their roof, waiting for troops to get too close. I guess it wasn't all terrible. They were also building huge weapon factories, hospitals, and even theaters where they would show propaganda films. How the hell did they build all this stuff? This is amazing. They were even making hammocks out of American parachutes. It's the most amazing thing I've seen all month. All right, duly noted. Do not go into Vietcong tunnel systems. I had planned to do that, but I guess not anymore. Also, not for the claustrophobic either. I guess you can go visit some of the tunnels to this day. I've seen something like this before, and it always amazes me how little skyscrapers there actually are. Let's just first talk about the big one, New York. There's only 267 skyscrapers in New York. Why does this entire state feel like there's nothing but skyscrapers? There's actually 64 in Texas, and it'd be very interesting to see where most of them are coming from. Probably all like Houston. Texas has California beat. We only have 49. We prefer not to just pack people in. We just keep spreading and spreading and spreading. And then there's just all these states with nothing. There are 0 skyscrapers. There are very tall buildings in these places, like Hawaii, for instance, has like pretty tall buildings. But what is a skyscraper defined as? It's got to be at least 100 meters or 150 meters in height. So that explains a little bit of confusion. So yeah, I mean, what's the point? You don't need skyscrapers. You don't need to build them. Gold medal winning times in the men's 100-meter sprint at the Summer Olympics. We're starting back more than 100 years ago. The first ever time was 12 seconds. And at this time, the winner was awarded with a silver medal. They weren't willing to give him gold back then. Then slowly but surely, we have these blue dots. Every single decade, humans get a little bit faster. What was going on in the 30s? Look at these guys. They deserve more credit. Then between the 1960s and 80s, it gets a little bit lower until we get to Usain Bolt, who finished the race in 9.63 seconds. This dude that won after Usain Bolt wasn't even like that great of a time. I'm saying that, well, I would get like 20 seconds. Even though we're only talking about a difference between 12 seconds and 9.5 seconds, that is an eternity in this sprint. Koala distribution across Australia. Pretty much koalas don't like Western Australia or the Northern or Southern territories. They're all on the East Coast, which this is where like most of Australia's population are too, because this is like much more habitable than the rest of the continent. I'd imagine this isn't that surprising. A lot of species probably just live on this side of things, unless they just like all the heat out here. It looks like what separates New South Wales from from Victoria is a river, so the koalas like to gather up around that. They seem to need water, too. Who would have thought? The distribution of financial wealth in the United States. So let's check out this one dude. The top 1% owns 43% of the wealth. Then the next 4% owns 29% of the wealth, and you can see where it begins to go from here. The bottom 50 own less than 1% of the wealth. If U.S. land was divided like U.S. wealth, we've seen this map before. This dude would get all of the states just all by himself. Everyone else has to stay by the Sun Belt. Hey, but that doesn't look too bad. I mean, we get Texas, Florida, parts of California. Who cares if we're just jammed in here with like 300 million people? This would be way more fun than them. We could just invade this guy. I've made that joke before, but I just want to repeat it again. The Alaska Panhandle, according to different governments. Well, that is terrifying, and I never knew that we weren't all in agreement about the Panhandle. That seems to be a bit of a problem. The blue line represents what the United States believed to be all of Alaskan territory. The green line is what the British Columbians thought it was. The red one was the border that was claimed by Canada and the United Kingdom. Oh, and the yellow is what we actually have today. So for a time, this was somewhat fought over. Now it's not so much anymore. We came to kind of a nice agreement, I guess. It was a pretty good middle ground. I guess they didn't care what British Columbia thought. I'm just glad that this isn't still going on to this day, or it might be. They just try not to talk about it so we don't go to war with Canada. Once again, Australia, but this time we're looking at how many more kangaroos there are than humans in certain parts of it. The only place humans outnumber the kangaroos is in this southeastern portion, as well as in Tasmania. But for every other spot, there's a huge difference. Humans in this state specifically need to be very careful with what they say and do. There are 22 million kangaroos, only 5 million humans. If there was a war that was waged between just these two factions, each human would have to kill 4 to 5 kangaroos. And I don't know if you guys can do that. I've seen one too many really mean, angry kangaroos that like box people. I think it'd be a good idea to start domesticating these things so we could start riding them into the desert. This diagram shows us traditional Japanese footwear throughout the years. You gotta love the simplicity of this. I would love to get some for myself. I could really use these high ones. Gotta make myself look less short. I kind of want this simple design right here. Those look like really nice for the beach. There looks to be some lady ones, and then there's whatever that is. Those look like snowshoes in a way. And is this for skiing or icing? Do they do that? What is that for? That's gotta be for the snow. I actually would want to get some of this. Do they sell this on Amazon? The geography of Equatorial Guinea is very strange. There's this part, which is on continental Africa. It has 72% of the population, but it's obviously pretty tiny. Then there's this island, formerly known as Fernando Po. It has the capital city in it and has 28% of the population. That is a weird choice. You'd think the capital would be like Bata or something so that you can like have a harbor there, send ships out to the islands. Because there is one more island down here, it looks very tiny, and it's also separated in between this island. So it's kind of random they gave this small country these 2 islands, but I'm sure they don't mind it. There's probably like 12 people living here. They'll take it. It would be fascinating to look into why they did that. Like, why not give some of that stuff to Cameroon? I'm sure they got some stuff. Nigeria is pretty big. I'm sure they'd like a capital city like that. Countries with the most gold medals starting back in the 1800s. So by 1915, the US was doing great. 150, wow, almost 200 right now. I wonder how WW2 is going to change this. Well, first of all, it's going to stop for a little bit here. Small pause in the action. Gets back up in the 1950s. France becomes second place, but barely. Oh, they're tied with Great Britain for a little bit here. Soviet Union starts to catch up. It was out giving some special juice to their athletes, huh? Something like that. I like how East Germany rise past Germany for a second there. Oh, East Germany was doing really good, actually. This is where the Cold War was fought and won, the Olympics. No one gives them credit for that. 2002, and we still have this chart labeled the Soviet Union. How does that work? Well, I guess they're there. They just can't accumulate more medals. Wait, so you're telling me that to this day, the Soviet Union is still in second place with most medals of all time. They haven't existed in the last 30 years. What in the hell? Same for East Germany, too. Never really considered that, like, they weren't just competing against the USSR, they were competing against Eastern Germany, Poland, like, you know, that whole, like, Eastern Bloc thing. But damn, America with over 1,000. No one else is even close. How hot can it get on different surfaces? The air temperature in this scenario is all at 90 degrees. If you're on grass, the actual surface is about 97 degrees. If you're on concrete, it can be 115. Anyone knows that if they've, like, walked barefoot outside in a hot day. But on asphalt, it is 140 degrees. It can get at least as high up as that. It's why you cannot walk your dog without some dog shoes. I've seen a big push for that. I'm just gonna like ride my dog home if this is the case though. I'm not stepping on that asphalt either. I'm not gonna carry him. Oh god, Peter's gonna come after me for that, aren't they? The top 10 most viewed movies, series, and non-English titles as of July 2021. So this is pretty up to date. In the yellow, we have a lot of non-English titles, which are actually doing a lot better than I thought. They're getting very close to some of these series right here. The Queen's Gambit, Stranger Things Season 3, and Tiger King aren't even in the top spot, surprisingly. I've never even heard of Emily of Paris. The most watched thing on Netflix of all time is Extraction at this point, and then it's Bird Box. Wow, that was like super overrated. Power of memes right there. That was what that was all about. Or wait, is it just me, or is there like a lot of things that I've never heard of? Is that supposed to be the case? Do you guys know about this? The number of British passports issued to Hong Kong citizens in the last 20 years. So during the transition from Hong Kong being a British colony to Chinese territory, at first nobody was really interested. Maybe the first year they were. Then 2001, wait, is this actually when it changes hands? That was when the first big spike happened. Over 100,000 people got that. Then there's kind of a slow dip, as you would expect, all the way into the 2010s. And then things kind of begin to rise. Protests start up, kind of a small spike in 2016, and then here goes 2019 and 2020. The most British passports ever issued, over 300,000 in 1 year, which, considering like all that news, I guess isn't that surprising. This is a fact that I wasn't really expecting, though. To be honest, this isn't even like close to all the Hong Kong residents that can get passports. This is still like less than 5% or something like that. US airline mergers from the 1970s to 2020. There's been a lot of airlines bought out. We've got United, Delta, America, Southwest, and Alaska. Those are the big ones right now. There's a lot that has been bought out, like Virgin America as of recently. That's like, I think, the most recent. There's a lot that I've never even heard of before. Texas International. I've heard of Pan Am, I think. Oh, and these two companies got split between United and Delta. Delta bought out a lot, but I think American has the most. There was an airline just called Reno back in the 90s. Trump? What? I did not know about this stuff. They've just slowly become more and more powerful. How is Alaska still going? That's what I want to know. It's like the biggest miracle, I feel. I've flown on Alaska. It's actually kind of nice. Flying on Alaska to any other state but Alaska is really confusing, though. And big thanks to the July patrons. Abolish Wyoming 2021. Drew's Argentinian Grandpa. AryanAfterHours. I'm about a nut. Lol. Yo. LuxembourgLover. Mine Brothers 99. Poppy Drew. Patrick C. Popcorn 2008. Peter T. Stormtrooper 501. Zeffi. Manny. Kaylee K. EpiNick, EpiNick, Elijah Senpai, Alfonso M6, Aaron F, Dalton D,